Have you ever looked up at a plane tracing across the sky and just wondered, what actually happens if something goes wrong up there? When the unthinkable happens, or honestly, even when there's just a really close call, who takes the wheel on the ground? Who is exactly in charge of uncovering the truth? Well, welcome to this explainer. If you're preparing for your CPL or you just really want to master air regulations, I absolutely urge you to subscribe to the Pilot Arnav YouTube channel for more essential DGCA aviation content. Today, we're going to unpack exactly what happens behind the scenes of an aviation anomaly and explore the incredibly strict step-by-step processes that keep our skies safe.
Okay, let's dive right into this. Our primary guides today are the International Civil Aviation Organization's Annex 13 and the very strict regulations laid out by India's Directorate General of Civil Aviation, or DGCA. Now, the fundamental purpose of these frameworks is absolutely crucial to understand before we go any further. The ICAO, which is a specialized UN agency, sets the global standards for safety and efficiency, and through Annex 13, it provides the ultimate, universally accepted framework for conducting aviation investigations. But here's the single most important thing to remember throughout this entire explainer. Our ultimate flight path today leads to prevention, not blame. We investigate to learn, adapt, and improve the system as a whole.
So, here is our pre-flight checklist for today. First, accidents versus incidents. Second, the immediate response protocol. Third, securing the scene. Fourth, the investigation process. And finally, global cooperation and prevention.
Section 1. Accidents versus incidents, defining the occurrence.
Right, so before anyone can take action on the ground, we have to precisely classify what just happened up in the sky, because not every anomaly is treated the same way, and the strict definitional differences here are incredibly important. An accident is severe. It means a person is fatally injured by being in or indirect contact with the aircraft, or maybe even a part that detached from it. An accident also includes an aircraft sustaining structural or performance defects. Think of, say, an engine failing and tearing away wingtips, or a severe bird strike that genuinely compromises the airframe. It even covers a scenario where the position of the aircraft is completely unknown and the official search has been terminated, meaning the aircraft is classified as missing. An incident, on the other hand, is an occurrence on the ground or in flight that affects safety, but doesn't quite cross the line into an accident. This includes things like forced landings, flying in unairworthy conditions, or being forced to land back at your departure aerodrome without finishing the scheduled flight. It also includes air traffic incidents like aircraft proximity, what we call air progs. If you've studied navigation, you probably know about the Traffic Collision Avoidance System, or TCAS, and its alerts. A TA, or traffic advisory, tells the crew traffic. An RA, or resolution advisory, goes further. It literally commands the pilots to climb or descend to avoid a collision. These near misses or failures of ground facilities are classic incidents that require immediate reporting.
So when exactly can an accident or incident occur? Well, for manned aircraft, the active flight phase begins the second people start their embarkation, meaning they're boarding with the actual intention of flight, and it only ends after landing and full disembarkation. Actually, scratch that. Let's make it clear. If a catering truck hits the plane while everyone is completely offloaded, it's a ground handling issue, not an aviation accident under this specific definition. For an unmanned aircraft, like a drone, the timeline is a little different. It's considered active from the exact moment the aircraft is ready to start its flight until it comes to a complete rest and the primary propulsion system is fully shut down.
30 days. This right here represents a strict threshold in aviation regulation. An injury is classified as a fatal injury only if the person passes away within 30 days of the date of the accident. Now, you might be wondering, why 30 days? It's a very specific window defined by the regulations to ensure that global reporting statistics are completely standardized everywhere. If someone tragically succumbs to their injuries on, say, day 35, it actually alters how the occurrence is statistically recorded under Annex 13, even though the human loss is obviously just as devastating.
Now, right in that gray area between an incident and a full-blown accident lies the serious incident. This is defined as an occurrence involving a high probability of an accident. Even without a crash, these high-risk scenarios demand extreme scrutiny from the DGCA. We're talking about examples like fires and smoke in the passenger or cargo compartments, the emergency use of oxygen by the flight crew, and uncontained engine failure or disintegration, multiple system malfunctions, or instances where the flight crew faints or becomes incapacitated during a flight. If it's a near collision that required an abrupt, hard-evasive maneuver to avoid a disaster, but wasn't officially an accident, it falls squarely right here into this category.
Alongside serious incidents, we also have incredibly strict definitions for what actually constitutes a serious injury. To be classified as a serious injury, a person must require hospitalization for more than 48 hours, and that has to commence within 7 days from the date the injury occurred. Other thresholds include bone fractures, lacerations that cause severe hemorrhage or nerve and muscle damage, internal organ damage, second or third degree burns, or literally any burns affecting more than 5% of the body surface area. It even includes verified exposure to infectious substances or injurious radiations. As you can see, it is highly clinical and exact. There is no room for subjective interpretation by the airlines.
Section 2. The Immediate Response Protocol, the Chain of Command. Okay, so we've defined the occurrence. But what happens the very second an anomaly occurs? The rapid communication chain unfolds step by step. If there is an incident of major significance, the pilot in command absolutely must use the appropriate air or ground radio frequencies to report it to air traffic control immediately. I know there's a heavy workload in the cockpit during an emergency, but this communication is vital, partly so that surrounding aircraft can be warned, or intimidated, as the regulatory source specifically notes, of immediate hazards, like extreme convective weather or wind shear. The ATC then informs the aircraft operator, who in turn has to officially alert the authorities. Now, if the pilot in command is tragically killed or incapacitated, the operator, higher, or their authorized representative must take over this notification duty without any delay. Time is absolutely of the essence here. You have exactly 24 hours. Formal notification has to be sent as soon as possible, but definitely no later than 24 hours, to the Aircraft Accident Investigation Bureau, or AIIB, and the DGCA. Additionally, an air traffic incident report form must be submitted by the quickest means possible, with a copy sent straight to the Executive Director of the Airport Authority of India at Rajiv Gandhi Bhavan, Safdarjung Airport in New Delhi. This initial report includes the aircraft identification, the type of incident, and all the miscellaneous details. Crucially, if the accident occurs in India, the local district magistrate and the officer in charge of the nearest police station must also be informed so local authorities can quickly mobilize.
Section 3. Securing the scene, protecting evidence.
Once the authorities are notified, the ground response kicks off, and the incident site must be treated with the meticulous care of a crime scene. Physical evidence forms the crucial puzzle pieces here. No unauthorized person is allowed to enter the area until the full investigation is wrapped up. The wreckage cannot be moved without explicit permission from the AAIB and the Director General. Flight recorders, the famous black boxes, along with air traffic service records and maintenance documents are immediately locked down. The investigator in charge has sole access to conduct the probe, and specifically under Indian regulations, the guarding of the wreckage and supervision of any photography is strictly overseen by police officers, the district magistrate, and, get this, officers from the Department of Post and Telegraph, which is really a nod to the historical and ongoing importance of securing all telecommunication records and lines surrounding an occurrence.
Section 4. The investigation process. Uncovering the truth.
So the site is perfectly secure. Now the international experts step in. Annex 13 spells out global participation meticulously. The primary responsibility falls on the state of occurrence, the country where the incident actually happened. They initiate and lead the investigation, setting up the investigative body and coordinating with the other states. For example, let's say an aircraft registered in country A, operated by an airline from country B, crashes in country C. Country C leads the probe, but country A, the state of registry, and country B, the state of operator, get a seat at the table to participate and provide crucial maintenance and crew training info. The state of design and manufacturer also jumps in to offer their deep technical expertise on the aircraft systems. It's a massive team effort.
There's also a very specific rule regarding the state of design and manufacture. If an aircraft's maximum mass exceeds 100,000 kilograms, the state of design and the state of manufacture shall, upon request by the state of occurrence, inform them of the name of their representative to be present at the investigation. This just ensures that for the largest and most complex aircraft in the sky, like a huge Boeing 777 or Airbus A350, the original engineers and technical experts who literally built the machine are directly involved in analyzing the failure.
Now, this comprehensive process inherently takes time. Look at this typical timeline. Say an incident occurs on January 1st. Within a few days, maybe by January 5th, an expert investigative body is formed to meticulously examine the site, gather up ATC recordings, study the weather patterns, and interview witnesses. By April, an interim or preliminary report is published, often submitted to the appropriate state and to the ICAO, providing initial factual findings but without drawing any final conclusions. It isn't until months later, perhaps the following January or sometimes even longer, that a comprehensive final report is released, documenting the entire sequence of events and making formal safety recommendations.
Section 5. Global Cooperation and Prevention. Learning for Tomorrow.
So how do these meticulous, years-long investigations result in tangible improvements? Well, the whole philosophy is continuous learning. Minor incidents yield major insights. Consider a case where an engine blade broke off mid-flight. It didn't cause a crash, it was successfully contained and classified as a serious incident. But the resulting investigation uncovered a critical, microscopic manufacturing flaw. That discovery prompted immediate improvements on the factory floor worldwide, enhancing global flight safety and preventing future, potentially catastrophic disasters. These incidents act as stepping stones rather than stumbling blocks.
Building on this on a global scale, the tragic crash of Air France Flight 447 back in 2009 is a prime example of how the system responds to the unthinkable. The investigation involved a monumental collaboration uniting France, Brazil, and the United States. Each nation contributed unique resources, from deep-sea recovery vehicles to meteorological expertise. Annex 13 fostered this vital international teamwork, ultimately leading to worldwide improvements in high-altitude pilot training, pitot tube systems, and global aircraft tracking. Up in the sky, we really are all on the same team.
Aviation evolves fast, and Annex 13 is a living, breathing document that evolves right alongside it. It is constantly updated by the ICAO to accommodate new tech and new safety protocols. Recent amendments mean it doesn't just cover traditional manned commercial flights anymore. It now encompasses serious incidents involving unmanned drones navigating complex airspaces and even the emerging field of commercial space vehicles. It adapts continuously so that every incident, no matter the vehicle, contributes to the overarching goal of safety.
And this brings us right back to the heart of the matter. Every incident becomes an opportunity to enhance aviation safety, to prevent, not to apportion blame. This is the very soul of the DGCA and ICAO frameworks. Investigators are not prosecutors. They aren't there to point fingers, assign liability, or issue fines. They are there purely to find out what went wrong, chemically, mechanically, or operationally, so we can implement real safeguards to ensure it never, ever happens again.
Which leaves us with this final thought. If every accident, every incident, and every close call rewrites the rules and forces the aviation industry to be better, how will tomorrow's investigations make our skies even safer? The cycle of continuous learning never stops. And hey, neither should your aviation education. Remember to subscribe to the Pilot Arnav YouTube channel for more deep dives into DGCA, aviation content, and air regulations that are absolutely essential for your CPL journey. Thank you so much for joining me on this explainer.